do we all need? All of our rights now. We stand united, will not be moved. Right now, we'll not back down, no. Right now, we'll not be moved. Right now, we've staked our claim now. Right now, we've mapped out our route. What do we all need? All of our rights now. Keeping us all aware off of the streets. What do we all need? All of our rights now. We stand united, will not be moved.
I'm Jessie Leavier. I'm a co-coordinator with POWER, and we're a grassroots anti-poverty group here in Portland, led by low-income people, united with all people who care about economic justice and ending poverty. Together, we fight for our rights to food, housing, healthcare, living wage jobs, and education. These are all basic rights, and we feel like we deserve all these rights. And with our fellow brothers and sisters of the National Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign, we're working to build a new movement to end poverty in this country.
I'm really glad to see everybody's here. Yay! Thank you all for coming. I'm going to introduce all of our Truth Commissioners. These people will sit up here and they're going to listen to the testimony that is given by these 13 people in the front row. After they hear all the testimony, they will leave and they will come back and they will deliver their findings about what they heard tonight.
We're here tonight to expose the injustice of poverty and the economic human rights violations that are happening in our communities. We're here to shine a light on what would otherwise remain hidden, to undisappear that which has been disappeared. And we're here because it is simply unacceptable for even one person to live in poverty in this rich nation. We're here because right here in Maine, in the state that proudly claims that it's the way life should be, 200,000 people are suffering below the poverty level, and another 260,000 are low income, just struggling to make ends meet. We're here because tied only with Arkansas and Mississippi, Maine leads the nation with the fastest growing poverty rate in the country. We're here because this is not the way life should be. Not here in Maine and not anywhere in the richest country on earth. We've had it up to here and we're putting poverty on trial.
All right.
Sisters, my name is Peter Kelman. I'm a member of POWER and president of the Southern Maine Labor Council.
I'm 68 years old.
My name is Carrie. I'm a POWER member and a student at the University of Southern Maine, and I'm honored to read this anonymous testimony. My name is Amanda. I'm 24 years old and live in Portland, Maine.
I'm 60 years old.
I grew up in northeastern Maine, and I grew up in a middle-class family, so I didn't really realize how the effects of poverty would have on myself or my family.
And I'm going to be reading testimony from Brian Burgoyne. Brian says, I come from the town of Van Buren in Aroostook County. I'm 35 years old and I'm a POWER member of POWER.
My name is Maria Sanchez Grande. I'm here today to tell you my story.
My name is Chris. I'm a member of POWER and I'm reading anonymous testimony of someone else. My name is Susan. I'm 23 years old and I live in South Portland.
My name is Jessie. I'm 29 years old and I was born in Bangor, Maine.
My name is Charles Veit and I'm 34 years old. I'm a citizen of the city of Portland. This is my whole life. Everything I own is in this bag.
My name is Jesse and I'm going to be reading testimony for Heather Blanchard. So, hello, my name is Heather Blanchard. I'm 38 years old and I grew up in the Portland area.
My name is Isabel Lyle. I'm a POWER member and I'm going to be reading someone's anonymous testimony. My name is Meg This is my anonymous testimony about having my economic human rights violated. I cannot tell you my real name.
This winter, our heat will stay at 56 degrees because we cannot afford the rising cost of heat.
Tonight, I'm focusing on violations of my human rights to health care.
Practically all of my rights have been violated, including my basic right to have a family and raise my children.
I applied for Medicare. I got denied several times. I applied for Social Security benefits, denied 3 times.
I missed a day of work and was fired. With no income, February 2002, in the dead of a Maine winter, I lost my apartment. I spent the following 6 months homeless on the streets of Portland.
I'm a recent widow suffering with multiple sclerosis. For months now, I've been living with absolutely no income and no housing of my own. I am sick and I am barely surviving.
Well, I worked in a few other places after that. Worked in another shoe shop where I was president of the union. Same thing, that place closed. I worked at Malden Mills in North Berwick. That place closed.
And then I went to the USM clinic, and by sheer luck, a nurse practitioner had a neurologist friend who took pro bono clients, and she referred me to him, and he was really kind, and he agreed to treat me. And an EEG and other tests confirmed that I in fact had narcolepsy, which is a rare and disabling sleeping disorder for which there is no known cure. So I couldn't continue working anymore, and I lost my job.
Finding housing was especially difficult because of the discrimination I faced. I must have called over 100 apartments. I was discriminated against repeatedly for being an immigrant, for having children, for being a single mother, and finally because I received Section 8. For example, some landlords will tell me the place was rented, but when my English-speaking friends called, they will be told the same apartment was still available. Several landlords also say that they wouldn't rent to me because I had children.
Often in Portland apartments, I've had poor heat and have spent the winter huddled over a kitchen stove for warmth.
I gathered myself together and I got into housing. I actually had gotten Section 8 but lost the voucher because nobody would take it. Every time I'd go to an apartment, they'd say, oh, you have Section 8, well, we'll get back to you. Then I wouldn't hear from them. Or, oh, the landlord's not taking Section 8 because you guys don't take care of your apartments.
It's the ultimate catch-22. Housing says I must have custody of my children before I'm eligible for a large enough apartment. And DHS says I must have a large enough apartment before I'm eligible to have custody of my children.
When us middle-class people go through a rough patch, we get through the other side and tell the tale, but you get a rough patch when you're low income and have to go for help and you're under the microscope, the kids are gone.
I had left one job in a telemarketing firm that had closed, and I went to work for Walmart, and they put you on a 90-day probation period. In that probationary period, within 90 days, you could be let go. 2 days before the end of that probationary period, 2 days before Christmas, 65 people were pulled into the Auburn Walmart office to say thank you for your services, you are no longer needed. I was put to the streets.
Then Voc Rehab got me a job at a parking garage for $5 an hour. I eventually got full-time, but after 4 years, I got 1 10-cent raise. During this time, I worked really hard and tried to do everything I was supposed to do, but General Assistance audited me and determined that I made too much money, so they cut me off, just like that.
At one point, I developed pneumonia and landed up in the hospital for 3 weeks. When I was released, I had no place to go. I used up my SSI check staying in motels and becoming homeless, shelters and on the streets.
Then, when the $130 food stamps run out, instead of paying the electric bill, I have to use this money for food. And so our electricity gets shut off. General Assistance is no help. They say that I should be able to live on $980 a month. They treat me very disrespectfully and humiliate me. I don't like to go there because when I go, my soul shrinks and I feel very disempowered.
Left Lewiston, moved to Portland, staying at the Oxford Street Shelter. Each night, I go into the Oxford Street Shelter. I sleep on a mat that is 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, 4.5 inches thick. On to the left of me is 4 inches, and to the right of me is 4 inches, and after that is a mat. 154 people every single night stay at the Oxford Street Shelter, men and women.
But as this was all the money I had, for 3 years, I lived through 3 main winters without heat, so that I could buy at least one of my prescriptions every other month. And that still wasn't enough, and having to ration my pills is dangerous, and it's even life-threatening for me.
I cannot work. Multiple sclerosis has progressed to the point where on some days I can barely get out of bed. At this point, I use a walker to get around, and my eyesight is failing due to the medications I take for multiple sclerosis. And I have a hard time maintaining my balance.
Though I am no longer homeless, it's still hard living day to day with that experience in my memory. Being homeless is degrading enough, but being rejected for emergency medical help, I cannot describe how dehumanized I felt. They made me feel worthless, like a non-person.
Because I think that there's not much question that a lot of poverty in Maine is directly related to the working conditions or the lack of work that we face here. And when we do go to work, what our pay and benefits are like or aren't like.
So here I am, still homeless, only making about $7.75 an hour, and even at that point, at $7.75 an hour, cost of rents here in Portland are $650 to $700 a month. You do the math.
It took me over a year to tell this story, but today I have the courage to speak out.
Hello, I'm Karen DeAndre from the Red Group. And we worked very hard and had a really wonderful discussion, and was really glad to have Herb write some of this up. He's very eloquent. So I'm going to read what he had to say, or what we all had to say, excuse me. Rights may well belong best to all those who best organize to defend them. But all human beings have the right to justice, to security, to the right to an education, the right to health care in times of need and at all times, the right to mental health care in times of need and at all times, the right to shelter and to warmth, the right to adequate food, and the right to share with others. The right to an expectation that life has value, that your life has value. An acknowledgement that poverty kills, despair kills, and even loneliness kills. Braced with the acknowledgement that common cause can save us, that anger turned to solidarity can save us, that unity turned to action can save us, that holding our fellow man and our government responsible is the duty of each and all, and that no one should have to bare their soul to receive what every soul deserves. Thank you. I want to thank Kurt who wrote that. It's just very elegant. And I'm going to put Bert on the spot because I would like for Bert to come up and recite a poem that he recited to us during our talk, which I think really sums it all up wonderfully.
Coming up on 80 years ago, a German poet by the name of Bertolt Brecht wrote, "Just because he's human, a man would like a little bite to eat. He won't get full on a lot of talk. He must have bread and meat. Just because he's human, he doesn't want a pistol to his head. Wants no servants under him and no boss overhead. And just because he's a worker, the job is all his own. The liberation of the working class is the job of the workers alone." So, as Peter said, Those who are not yet members of Power, the table's up there.
Representative from the Blue Group?
So one of the things that we saw coming out of this, and I'm just going to kind of give sort of an overall sense of what we heard and what we thought, was that it appears to us very clearly that there is a flow right now of resources that's coming out of our communities to Portland in some instances, in terms of the communities dissolving, the families dissolving, the economic strength of the communities dissolving. All of that is being sucked away from the places that need it. The families don't have what they need, their children are being taken away, the money is being taken away, it's all coming away. And so what we were talking about was the need to reverse the flow. And what we'd like to see happen is take the money and send it back to the communities. Take the children and send them back to the families. Take the jobs and send them back out to these rural communities that really need them. Stop draining from the people. And I would take that one step further and say, at the national level, take it back. Reverse the flow. And so that was something that I really felt pretty strongly about. We need strong communities. We need strong families. We need healthcare, homes, jobs, all of that. And then that brings up another theme, which we heard from a lot of people, which is that when the healthcare system fails them, they fall through the cracks and their lives are on the verge of just being destroyed. And so if we had universal healthcare, can I hear an amen? So that's the second part. And what we heard tonight, which was really shocking to a lot of us, I think, as commissioners, and I think probably people in the audience too, was the comparison with Maine to some of these other states who, you know, we kind of look outside of our borders and say, well, those states are really struggling with poverty. And to hear that we were at the same level with some of the worst poverty-stricken states in the country is just really shocking. And so we would like to take this to our state government and say, perhaps it's time to declare a state of crisis. If you're looking at things like what happened with Hurricane Katrina, gosh, that was horrible. But what about before that happened?
Yes, right.
And where are we at now? Are we at a state of crisis? And we respectfully submit that we believe we are. We are there now. And so we would like to call upon our state government to acknowledge this state of crisis. The S word, study it, not really, but to at least acknowledge it. And in terms of really looking at that issue, one of the ideas we put forth was to potentially create a task force to really act upon this state of crisis and to come forward and give us some really positive solutions at the state level. Again, I just really have to say, and this is almost on behalf of my organization as well as everybody here, you know, the national level. I mean, it comes down to that. How horribly have they failed us? So, on that note, I really want to bring it back to a positive note, and I want to turn it over to John to talk about a specific program that there are more resources in the state.
Well, I'd heard a few people tonight talk about having to put their thermostats down for the winter. I think a lot of us know what that's like, paying $400 just to keep the temperature at 60 degrees. And a lot of the housing in Portland is very old housing stock and inadequately insulated. Representative Adams and I have been working to address that. But more immediately, I wanted people to know that this year the cost of gas has gone up. Northern Utilities has asked for a rate hike that it gets every winter. But an adjustment has been made on using the LIHEAP standards, which some people may be familiar with, so that though the cost may go up for some, who can afford it. If you're eligible for LIHEAP, then the cost will, the increase will be a much lower increase. I think 4%, 7% versus in the 20s, 25%. So I wanted people to know this very specific thing that they can take advantage of this winter. So call PROP, because the PROP has always been administering LIHEAP here in Portland, and they're using that same LIHEAP model to administer this program as well. So I don't want anybody to be cold. I know how bad it sucks. So please call before the bill comes. Call and try to figure out what's going on with that program, and if you're eligible. I'm sure. I know, 90% of the people in the room are. So
it's called
LIHEAP. But if you call POP and you tell them you want to know about the adjusted rate for low-income gas ratepayers, this is for Northern Utilities.
Okay.
Doesn't
you have to be
you got to be a Northern Utilities customer. There's there's a commission at the state level now addressing other heating fuel like oil, but this is about Northern Utilities. So if you're a Northern Utilities ratepayer, take advantage of that.
So I think a lot of it has been said, and everyone who testified said anything that we could want to say much better than we can say it. And with the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign, we really, really strongly believe that we are the experts on our lives and that we should all speak for ourselves. So I just want to thank everyone once again for having the courage, which should not be a difficult thing to have, but in our society it is very difficult to have the courage to stand up and to say what's actually happening in your life. We saw a lot of the common threads that people talked about, most starkly the healthcare crisis that's happening here in Maine and all across the country. This is not just something that's happening in Maine, but in every state. Cuts happening to MaineCare, TennCare, Pennsylvania Healthcare, every state across the board, and we cannot allow that to happen. So we see that as not only a symptom of poverty, but a cause of poverty, and that's going to be a real Achilles heel in changing the way things are in this country. The other thing that we saw is that this system is obviously not built to uplift people. It's not built to lift people out of poverty. Anytime someone makes an advance, it's not a good thing. It takes away your benefits. It becomes something that you feel like, well, what could I possibly do now? I tried to get that job and I got the job, but now I don't get my SSI. And so we wouldn't go so far as to say there's a conspiracy, but we would go so far as to say that this system is built to keep us down, and we have to shout these stories from the rooftops so that people know that even if they're going to try and keep us down, we're going to stand up. I now just want to read something really short that is a statement that our national coordinator for the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign, Sherry Honkala, put together. She wasn't able to be here, and it's not entirely in the interest of everyone speaking for themselves, but she really wanted me to read it. Dear members and supporters of Power and the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign, I'm very saddened that I cannot be here with you today. This topic, poverty and these human rights violations, touch me in a very personal way. As many of you know, I am a formerly homeless mother, and that as a child, I spent several years being raised in institutions instead of being raised by my poor mother, who should have been helped in every way. The damage to me, to my mother, and to my brothers and sisters has left lifelong scars. But we need to take these tears and we need to turn them into rage so that we can stop these human rights violations from happening in our rich country. The best thing that we can give our families during this difficult holiday season is what all of you are doing today. You're documenting and saying out loud
that this is wrong and that we love our families and each other enough to begin to start doing something about it. Let's continue to shine a light on these hidden tragedies. We look forward to your participation in next year's National Truth Commission, where we'll have stories from all over the country, from poor people's groups, from California to Portland to Pennsylvania to Florida, everywhere, coming together to Cleveland, Ohio, the poorest city in the country, to have a large National Truth Commission. We look forward to your participation in that. Let's ensure that all of our stories are documented and told. Together, we will stop these economic human rights violations and end poverty once and for all, because we know it is possible. On behalf of the entire National PPERC, we love you and we are so deeply inspired by your work. Thanks.
Thank the Truth Commissioners for their statements and their findings, and for being here tonight. So you've all heard the phrase, the actions speak louder than words. It's going to take some pretty big actions to speak louder than the words we heard tonight. We need to back up these words with a lot of action. So what can you do about it? What can you do? A reporter asked us yesterday, so can you tell us anything new about poverty in Maine? And you know, truthfully, I was like, no, I can't. Because it's not going away. I can't tell you it's getting better. I can tell you it's getting worse. I can tell you people are dying. But you've heard that before. But we gotta keep telling them, because clearly that's something new. Apparently they haven't heard. So Carrie is going to tell you about some ways you can get involved, and I hope to see you all on the streets.
I just want to thank everybody for sticking around and being here, because this is really important stuff, and it's important to hear these stories and listen closely and spread the word. So I'm going to echo what a lot of people have said already, which is join POWER, because they're fabulous. And there's a sign-up sheet on this table. They have meetings every month, and you can put email addresses. They also have an email listserv, so share your email address. This is a real local Portland organization. Start your own grassroots organization in your community. I'm sure POWER is happy to help you out, make connections. Keep documenting stories. Documentation is super important. These kind of truth commissions, shouting the stories from the rooftops, as we've heard. Tell people they have rights. It's a basic one. Keep yourself educated. Keep reading. I would encourage you to go to the website on your program, economichumanrights.org, the University of the Poor website. Call your representatives. They're elected to represent you. We're glad they're here tonight.